But I'm Sam, and I work in Creative Experience. I'm a public technology assistant that is a part of specifically Creative Experience. We're at all three of the locations, and that's Julia Davis, Bar, and then Central. What was I going to say? Oh, yes. Creative Experience is really great because we've got a lot of really fun events that you can be a part of like this, but also you can come in on any day and work on these kind of things. The program that we're going to be using today, we do have, but it is also free. So obviously you guys can use it at home without having to pay for anything. Yeah, there's a lot of really cool programs, but for programs that are a little bit harder to get at home, something like the different Adobe softwares where they're kind of expensive, it's nice to be able to go in and work on that. And it's also, even if you have these programs at home, it's actually kind of nice just to have a place to go to work on these things and have a cool place to, you know, process everything and be in a creative space and everything like that. Yeah, so that's my little spiel about Creative Experience. So I guess we can get started because it's about 6:08 and I want to make sure we have as much time as possible to be working. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And before I do, I'm going to move Zoom off to the side so that I can still see if we have a chat or anything. Okay, so I think we should be all good. And of course, the chat disappeared. So I will not be able to see. But if you do have any questions, you can put it in the chat and then Maddie can let me know. Or if it's a quick question, I think I did allow you to unmute in this if you need to. So feel free to ask any questions. I do want to make sure that we can kind of like keep it going this hour just so that we can get as much done as possible. But if something is confusing or doesn't make sense, just let me know. Oh, okay. Oops. I had a screen key thing that I wanted to keep up. Oh, I think it's gone. Oh, okay, that's okay. I'll just try to make sure that I'm as clear as possible when I'm talking about these. Actually, I might be able to just install it really quickly. I don't know if it actually worked or not. Okay, well, I was gonna have something in the bottom left-hand corner that would show you what I was, oh, there it is, okay. Okay, so in the bottom left-hand corner, you'll see now I have something that's gonna track what keys I'm using, so it makes it a little bit easier just to kind of show what I'm doing in case you couldn't hear something that I say, and also helps you a little bit on rewatch if something's unclear. But yeah, so the bottom left-hand corner should show the keys that I'm pressing, either, you know, and it should show combination keys as well. So like Control A and everything. Looks like we got someone in the waiting room. Okay, perfect timing. We are just now getting started. Okay, so what you should see when you open Blender is it should have the splash screen, and you'll actually probably have a camera angle that's more like this. But I always like to just get a flat surface to start with. So you can use, click on this gizmo up in the right-hand corner, this colorful thing, which if you used like Tinkercad or anything previously, looks a little similar, I think. It might be on a square in that one, but it's the same thing where it's like top, bottom, left, right, all that kind of stuff. I like to go from the Y point of view just because when I think of like left and right, I think of the x-axis. But if you just want to make sure that if it's your first time in the program and you want to make sure you're following me exactly, then I would have it from this angle. Otherwise, if you understand like 3D space, okay, you can have it from any other angle. It's totally fine. So I am going to go ahead and get rid of this box just to start out, just so we have a clean view. So to select something, you will use a left click button. So the I don't know if you can see me, this regular left click right here. And then X is going to be your delete button, and it'll ask you okay, and click it again. All good. So the first thing we want to do, because we're working on a pre-existing character that we want to model, is we want to add in our reference photo. So we will go up to the top left here where it says add, and we'll click this. This is where you can add all the mesh and everything. That's what we'll be using a lot later. But the first thing you want to add is the image, and you'll do a reference image, and it should show up with all of these images here, or all of your files. The only thing that's in here right now should be this reference image, so I went ahead and clicked on that. I went over this very quickly at the end of last session, so if you were there, you might know what I'm doing right now, so I'm going to kind of go through it a little fast. So this is right here. I want to make it a little bit bigger just to fill my screen a little better. So once you have it selected, and again, select should just be left click, so same as most other programs, you'll click S, and it should, as you move your mouse, move with sizing up and down. So I'm just going to size this up, and then I'm going to go ahead and click G to grab. And again, it has to still be selected when you do that. It should have an orange outline when you do that. Right now it's free floating, but I want it to move on that X axis. So I'm going to click X and move that over so that it's right in the middle here on my lines. And I can see a little bit better what's behind it if I click on X-ray mode, which works for meshes, but not for images. So what we want to do, because a lot of the times if you've worked with drawings before, you want to have kind of like a lowered opacity version, or like if you're using a light box to kind of see what's behind it. So the way we're going to do that is if you go to the right hand side and you click on this, it looks like a little picture, like the little landscape and sun, and it says object data properties. And you're going to see a bunch of stuff. The most important thing though is you want it to be the depth to be front. And that just means if there's a mesh, it doesn't matter where it is, it's always going to be in front of it. So right now, even though it's cutting that in half, it's always going to look like it's in front. But the way that we get this to not be an issue so that we can still see is we check opacity, and then we can just turn that down. I like to turn it down pretty far, just so I can just barely see it. And then this is something I'm hoping that you guys can see in this upper right-hand corner. I'm hoping my face isn't blocking it. I tried to make it so that it wasn't. There is a button, and it's the filter button, and it looks like a little, I forget the word, but the thing that you use to like pour one liquid into a different bottle. A funnel. It looks like a funnel. So you'll click on that, the filter button, and then you'll click right here on this little mouse button, and it says selectable. And so now that gives you the option to make something selectable or not. It basically locks the layer. So now no matter what I do, I can't click on that image. So real quick, I am going to make it reselectable though, because we have the front view, but we're going to also want the side view. So I'm actually going to duplicate this image. So to duplicate an item, you just do Shift D. And so now again, it's going to be moving freely, but I actually don't want it to move at all. I just want it to rotate. So I'm going to click R and then Z, because that's the up and down axis, and we want it to turn like that. So you'll see now it's turning. And if you look in the upper left-hand corner, you'll see that it has the degrees of rotation. If you want it to be a perfect degree of rotation, you can click Control, like hold down Control while you're moving it. And so now it should be 90 degrees. So now I've changed my direction. So if you kind of like go in between, you can see that they're in different directions. For this one though, I want to do that grab again. And this time it's going to be on the y-axis because that's what's our left and right. And I'm just going to move so that the side view of her is visible from this side. So I'm going to make both of those unselectable now with that filter button, and we should be able to get started. Right, so I did delete this and then I put it right back in to show you something, but I'm going to delete that again, and that's going to be that select an X. Okay, so now we're going to get started on modeling. So this is kind of the blocking out stage. So it's going to look really rough for a while. That is totally fine. If you've done any sculpture before, that's really common for sculptures to just look a little odd for a while. I'm just adjusting where this is exactly because I want to make sure that it's right on the origin here, just because it makes it easier if it's lined up. Oh, and I was zooming in. The way you zoom in is just with the scroll wheel, and you can just move that up and down, which you should be able to see in the bottom corner. Okay, so when we were designing our character, we were using a lot of shapes to like figure out where things were and what things meant, and to kind of like make a good character design. So we can use that again here to kind of start blocking in. So a couple things I wanted to mention. If you drew your character with clothes, like I did, that's totally fine. I will say if you are going to be changing the character's clothes at any point, you should probably model the body underneath it and then model the clothes separately. You can do it all at once, but I would just have them as separate objects. And I'll talk about that again when we start combining objects. But if you have it and you're just like, oh, I'm just going to print it, or oh, I just want it to like have, you know, renders and take pictures, you don't have to have the body separate from the clothes. And I think I will probably even make the bottom of her skirt just a solid thing so it's easier to print. But yeah, we'll talk about all the detail stuff a little bit later. Right now, we just want to get into start modeling. So we're going to go to add again, same place that we got the add image, but we're going to do add mesh. So there's a couple different things that we could do for her. I'm going to start with her torso, I think. I think I'll probably go ahead and start with a cylinder just to get that started, but it's going to be a combination of a lot of different shapes, but the cylinder is good because it has dimensions, it curves, and a lot of the times I do like starting with a square just because it's more precise, but a square is so flat on each side that you have to do a lot of work later to get it to come out in the other areas. So a good way to start out can be with a cylinder. And I'm going to size this cylinder down. And I just want to start editing it. So the big difference, if you've used any other 3D modeling, or specifically like Tinkercad, is you've probably used meshes before and shapes. But the difference is in Blender, you can go into edit mode. So to go into edit mode, this is going to be the most important thing, the most important button you'll probably use all the time. It's going to be tab. If you're having issues remembering, if you go up to this like top corner up here, it does show you all the mode options. So there's object, edit, sculpt, vertex paint, weight paint, and texture paint are going to be important in our last session. But object mode and edit mode, and then towards the end, we're going to go into sculpt mode as well. But we just want to go into edit mode, and we're just going to, I want to size this up so that it fits right at her waist there. And one thing I did not mention, I still have that X-ray mode on. So if I don't have X-ray mode on and I select these right here, it's only going to select the ones that I can see. So you want to make sure that you have X-ray mode on, because when I select these, it'll select that whole top. So I'm going to size this up so that it fits right at where her waist is. And I'm just going to do this skirt bottom here. And so I'm clicking S to size up. So it's the same as the grab that I've used. And I'm just sizing and moving on the different axes. The one thing that this bottom left-hand corner doesn't show is when I'm moving on a certain axis, it does not show you which one. And so I'm going to try and make sure I'm saying them verbally. But the blue is always going to be Z. The green is always going to be Y, and the red is always going to be X. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly black in this skirt. And one thing you'll notice when you start modeling is things that you've done well and things that you haven't done well when you're designing your character or when you're drawing the reference. So I show that her skirt goes down kind of low in the front, but if I zoom out, you can actually see that it goes up in the front. And it's mostly just because I'm making it clear to myself that I'm trying to make a skirt that goes out and is round. So the reference, and I tried to make this as, like important as possible last time when we were talking about making references. A lot of this stuff is just for you. Or for whoever is going to be 3D modeling your character. So same as when I was talking about the hands, I just kind of drew them in there in the way that I would need them to be understood while I'm modeling. So now I'm going to tab out of edit mode, and you can always go in and out anytime you need. So one thing I noticed here is I put this a little lower than I wanted, and I kind of want another section right here. So one tool that's really helpful for adding in extra things, because I could just, bring this up and size it in, but I really want this to stay where it is, and I just want an extra cut in there, is this left-hand side, and it's got tons of things in it. I don't even use half of them. It's just one of those programs that there's a million things that you can do, but you'll want to go to the loop cut button, and there's also the knife button. So the knife is nice because it lets you make a free cut of whatever you want. But I specifically want it to look the same as the other lines. So I'm just gonna click right there. You can also change the number of cuts it does at once. So I have it up to 3. You'll see it'll separate it up in 3 cuts. But I have it back down at 1. So now I can just adjust this section. So now you'll see I have this nice looking skirt here. And because I'm going to be printing this with the skirt solid, I don't have to change this, but I do want to show you something. So right now, because we started with a cylinder, it has a top and a bottom. And I want to show you what having a solidify modifier looks like. So I'm going to go ahead and go into edit mode again. But if you go up to this top left-hand corner, there's vertex select, edge select, and face select. So I want to do face select so that I can just select this top. Sometimes turning off X-ray makes it easier. And I'm going to say delete like I would with an object, but you can pick whether you want vertices, edges, or faces to go away. I want faces to go away. So I'll do that for these. So if I were making this skirt like a normal skirt and I didn't want it to be like closed off, I could then go to the modifier tab. The modifier properties are super important and we'll be using them a ton, but you'll go to add modifier and then solidify. So you can kind of see that it added that there. So right now it's on a negative, which means it's going to go in instead of out. But if I bring up the thickness, you'll be able to see it a little better. So if I were having a normal skirt, this is kind of what I'm looking for. And you can have it go outwards instead of inwards, either way. And it's on fill right now. If I do unfill, it'll have those 2 walls that it made, but they won't be connected. So if you're having some kind of like dress or like the bottoms of pants or something like that, you'll want to have it filled and you'll just want to adjust the thickness to make it look great. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and go back a couple because I wanted mine to be solid. Okay, and I'm going to now add in, and I know that I won't have time to do the entire model in this 1 hour, but I want to make sure that I get a couple of key body parts done to show you. So I'm going to I'm just going to quickly, I think, block in this top section here. And then I think we might go ahead and move on to arms, and then arms and hands, and then we can do the head, because I want to show a little bit of sculpting, and that's going to be the biggest place that you're going to use. Oh, this is one thing that I really want to mention. So I'm sizing things up right now, and if I were to just size up this right here, it just moves those vertices and nothing else. But if I want the whole thing to pinch in just a little bit, you'll turn on up here proportional editing. And what that does is you'll see this gray circle. That's how much of the mesh it'll affect, but it's going to kind of pull in things around it. So I wanted this to kind of go up, and I wanted to create that arch there. So it's super helpful when you're starting to go from just flat lines to starting to have a little bit of like curve and shape to things. All right, so we've got that kind of torso going. One thing you'll notice though, and I'm going to switch over from that front view to the side view, is as you're doing this, especially if you have like a character that has like a chest. I mean, most characters are going to have some sort of chest, but it's more visible if there's more of a chest. You'll see here that it's also doing it on the back. So we want for that to not happen. So you can go in from this side now that you can see the back view, and you can just kind of adjust and bring in the parts that need to be brought in, and move things that need to be moved, all that, just so that it looks a little bit better. So now we have that chest that's visible, and I'm actually just gonna move this up a little, and you'll notice the inconsistencies in your drawings pretty quickly. Like I'm noticing like, oh, I have the chest a little higher on the side view and not as high on the front view. Just pick whichever one looks better. So you can kind of like start to like go in between the two and meet in the middle on them, but whichever one starts to look correct to you, you can just start moving in that direction. Okay, so now we've kind of got that dress done here, or blocked in. So now I'm going to go ahead and add another mesh in here to start working on the arm. And it's going to be done in pretty much the same way, but I am going to show you how to mesh or remesh two things together and join things together in a way that makes them look like you did it all at once. So I'm going to bring this down in size because we just want this to match up. And this is a place where you'll probably start noticing that sometimes that A pose is a little bit too close, like because she's got a little bit of a chest and she's got bigger arms, you don't want anything to be overlapping. So I am probably going to I'll go ahead and model the arm the way it is, but once I have gotten to the point where I'm done with the arm, I'm actually going to go ahead and put it up in an A pose or a T pose, like all the way out. And I'll show you what I'm talking about in just a sec. So I'm going to just start adjusting this arm. And this is where it's very helpful that she's a very round character because we're able to use a lot of simple shapes. If you're doing a more angular character, like say you're doing like the old man from Up, maybe you don't want to start with a cylinder, or you don't want to start with a sphere, that's the word I'm looking for. Maybe you do want to start with a square and just start sculpting on a square, and that's totally fine. You just have to kind of figure out what works the best for the character that you're working on. All right, So we're at a little bit of a junction now where we're at the elbow. I just want to make sure that that angle is correct. And I am actually going to extend, and I'm not sure if I mentioned that earlier, when you're adding another section, you click, once you've got this loop selected here, you just click the E key, and that'll extend it so that you can have another object. And I just want to have a couple of these really close because I want that elbow to be creased in a little bit. So the more vertices that you have, the more detail that you can get in your model. There is a threshold of a point where it's too many, and that kind of depends on what you're using them for and what computer setup you have. So like the computers that we have here, you could probably be working with like 1 million of these dots and it would be no problem. Once you get more than that, it's going to start being a problem, but right around there should be totally fine. And one thing that I'm actually going to show you is we were talking about the solidify modifier to do clothing. I am actually going to duplicate this arm. And you can change the names of things if you double click them over in the layers over here. I'm actually just going to call this like, I guess shirt is fine. And I'm just going to turn that off for right now, but I'm going to basically, I ended where that cuff of the sleeve is going to be just so you can see it is different than the skin. But I'm going to keep on modeling this. Yeah, size that down. So we're now at the point where it's starting to go into the hand. So the hands are going to be a lot of little parts, and I would not suggest just building off of this. I would like put new shapes in here. So I'm actually going to go ahead and do a cube for the palm of the hand. I'm going to bring that down, size it down. And I'm actually going to go ahead and see it from this direction because I do just want to make sure that it's not going to be too thick for this body. Okay, we're going to rotate it and just going to size it down. And we just want to make sure that we're filling up the area of the hand. So I'm actually going to start modeling this outwards. So I've got this loop selected here. I'll go ahead and drag this hand out. And we don't have to do anything too crazy. One thing you will notice though, is if you are just sizing down normally instead of sizing on an axis, is you'll see that this is actually thinner at the point now. So I'm actually going to just make this a little bit thicker. And you can always do tons of tweaks on these. You know, it's not the same as doing things in person. You know, you can just go back and keep just tweaking and tweaking and tweaking until you get the correct thing that you're looking for. And I'm actually going to give this a little more dimension and use that loop cut that we were using before. Oops. Just so I can bring this wrist out a little bit. So I want the wrist of this hand to kind of match where I have sleeve ending. So that's pretty close. And as long as there's not any huge gaps, we'll be fine. So this having an overhang isn't really going to be a problem. We're going to go in and do some sculpting and everything on that. We just want to make sure that like it's not sitting like this where there's like a big hole in between them. We just want to make sure that they're touching okay. And overlapping is better than not touching. And it's going to take a long time to kind of get used to like moving around in that 3D space. So if you just want to only click on the different angles, that's totally fine. Sometimes you do want to see what things look like from like a 3/4 angle. So you might want to like check your work as you're going. All right, but now we've got this palm here. And I'm going to go back to the trusty cylinder and use that to make some fingers. And I am just stretching this out here. And I just want to make sure from this angle, the fingers look okay. And I'm just going to size down this section. And for the fingertips, I'm just going to make this go out again and just make it real small for the fingertips. And we can round it out later. And the great thing about doing artwork on the computer is you can copy and paste things. So I'm going to duplicate. And for this, I am going to make the fingers a little bit longer for the other ones. So what you just saw me do was I was stretching it, but I was sizing it in a specific direction. But if you keep clicking that direction, so right now it's going to be what the axis sees. If you click the Z again, it's what the axis was when I originally pulled that object in. So it knows that the up and down is still this direction. So I just want it to be longer. So I go like that. And I'm going to do the same for the other ones. Okay, and the thumb I'm going to show is going to be a little bit different because you don't want it to just be a short finger. There's also a little bit of extra stuff that the thumb does. It kind of curves up a little bit, and it also kind of goes into, because it's, you know, these kind of all branch out, but then this one has a little curve. So it's like part of that palm a little bit. So you just want to kind of build that in. And I'll probably go ahead and even make that a little wider so you can tell it's going into the palm. Alrighty. So now we've got all these things, but you'll tell, and I'm actually going to hide the reference for a second. So this is kind of what we got. She almost looks like a little robot right now because it looks very disjointed. So the way that we can kind of fix that is you'll want to join them and then remesh them. So if you select all of them, and you can just do that like click and drag select, or you can do click and then shift and click and click and click and click on all of those. Sometimes it is important to select them in a specific order, but that's much more of a complicated thing. So you can just select them. If you right click, there's a bunch of cool things that show up that you'll need at some point. Shade smooth is going to make it so that you can't see the polygons as well anymore. Shade flat is what it looked like originally. So you'll want to click join. So now these are all the same object. Because we haven't remeshed it, you can still undo it. So like in the way that you would do that on like Tinkercad, it's a little bit different. So you'll go to object. Up in this object menu, there's tons of things that are super important in this menu. And you'll do, if I can find the button. Oh, actually, I think you have to be in edit mode for this. So you'll be in edit mode. And it's actually in the mesh button. So you'll do mesh and you can separate it by loose parts. So now these are all loose parts and they're back to being their own separate section. But right now we want this to all be one object. So I'm going to go to that modifier tab again, the wrench, and add a modifier, and we want to add a remesh modifier. So Thankfully, this is a pretty simple model, so it's handling it really well. Sometimes when you get into the more complex modeling, it can be very slow and be really hard for your computer to understand it because it's going to try and like remake this model in a way that connects everything. So it defaults to voxel remesh and it defaults to 0.1 meters. If things look weird or they are not as detailed as you want them to be, like sometimes when you're working with fingers, it'll cut things off or be weird. This one seems to have handled it really well, but if you see that on your end that it's not looking right, you can turn down the voxel size and it'll start having more and more of those little dots that make up the mesh. I'm just going to leave it the way it is right now, just because it is working. I would not go past 0.01 on even a really good computer, just because it starts to get like exponentially more difficult for your computer to understand. So I'm going to click OK. And you can leave modifiers the way they are, or you can apply them. We need them applied for the way we're going to use them, but if you're looking at something like the mirror modifier, which I'm going to show you right now, you can leave it without applying it. So I'm going to add the mirror modifier. And right now it's flipping over this dot right here. This is the origin. We want it to just flip over the world origin. So that's what's under here. It's where the different points meet. So I'm going to do Control A, and that's going to apply, and we're going to say all transforms. And so now it's where it needs to be. So it's all good. And you can keep that there. You don't have to apply it until you absolutely need it. It also makes it easier for your computer to work with it because it's not actually there. It's just looking like it is until you apply it. So it's not as big of a file yet. Okay, now we're going to go into sculpting just to kind of make these go together a little bit better. So in the sculpting tab, it may be in a different view than you were in before. So you can change the view however you need to. You'll want to go to the smooth button. For right now, that's what we're going to use. And let me make sure that I have the, yes, I do have selected. And you'll just want to go in along the edges. Not sure why it's not showing it. I'm going to go ahead and apply the mirror modifier. I wonder if that's what the issue is. If it's just not cooperating yet. For some reason, it just didn't like my mirror modifier. Normally, it should work fine. But we just needed to go ahead and change it up. So one thing you'll notice is when you're smoothing it, it's just going to smooth on the one side. If you've applied that mirror modifier and you want it to apply across both sides, you can actually go up to the top right-hand corner with this little butterfly here and turn on mesh symmetry. So I have X and Y as left and right, and you'll see that it will go in and smooth on both sides. So I'm going to go in and smooth in all these different areas to kind of try and make it look good. And we just want to make sure this comes out okay. And you'll see with this remesh, it added a ton more geometry. So I'm going to tab into edit mode. So you'll see it's so much more dense than it was before. So if you find that it's making your computer run a little slow with Blender, you can always go into the modifier tab and click decimate. And the decimate modifier will show you how many faces you have right now. So right now there's 400,000, over 400,000 in just this arm, or well, I guess across both arms. So you can just turn down this ratio. So I'm probably just going to cut it in half just to see if it can do that for me. And one thing I will say, don't do anything too crazy because your Blender might crash. So make sure you're saving. If you have not saved yet, I would go ahead and save. To do that, it's just the same as any other program. You go up to the top left, do File, Save As, and then save it. It saves as a blend file. The only place you can open it is Blender. But yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and apply that. So now when I go into, it's taking a second for it to apply. Hopefully it doesn't crash. That'd be so sad. Okay, we're all good. So now when you go into edit mode, you can see that it's a little bit less dense now, and it tried to make it a little bit simpler. So now it only has about 200,000. But I'm just gonna go in with my sculpting tool, with my smoothing tool in the sculpting, and smooth out all those harsh corners that I got from using a square, and smooth out all the fingertips from using that cylinder. And it's just going to be a lot of, messing around with things. Also, make a decision on which side of the hand you're looking at, because I don't think I actually decided in my reference. I think I just drew fingers, which is not helpful. But there's a couple other tools you can use. You can use Sculpt Draw. If you see it's going to draw a bump, but you want it to draw inwards on any of these things, you can just hold Control while you're doing it, or up at the top, change it from plus to minus. But I'm just going to hold Control, and you'll see that now it drew that in there. Just want this to be a lot smaller. And I just want to make this wrist right here a little bit cleaner. And I can smooth that out, but I just want this to go in. So we'll smooth that out. Smooth, smooth, smooth. And same as any physical medium like clay, you're going to see that it's a lot of pushing things around, smoothing things out, making things look right, because it's a lot of messing around until you get something that looks correct. So okay, so this is still a very lumpy arm, but I want to go ahead and, because it's getting a little bit close to the end, I want to show a couple other areas of things that you can work on. So I think probably the most important thing is going to be the head. The legs, I would do pretty much the same as the arms. Go ahead and just make it in with cylinders, and make sure you're looking at both the side view and the front view to make sure that things are lining up. And then once you have done the base blocking out, you can go in with those same sculpting tools. With the, I would recommend using the draw or draw sharp, either one, and the smoothing, as well as inflate and layer. Those are all ones that I use a lot. So if you actually really quick, I'm gonna kind of add a little bit more of a palm here. So I'm going to use that layer button, and you can kind of see that it's giving me more to work with here. So that's probably a little more than I need. That strength is up really high. So I'm just going to draw in. You can kind of see there's that part and then the little parts right where the fingers are. And this is also if you're doing something like an animal that has paws. This could be very helpful for making those. But yeah, just kind of trying to add in the palm a little bit. So there's a couple different tools that you can use to kind of refine everything. Okay. And also really quick before we get to the head, which I know we only have about 10 more minutes left, there's a tool that you can use. So we use the regular voxel remesh. There is also, if you go under object data properties, there is a quad remesh. So this is going to make it so it's only squares, and it's going to be a little bit more even looking. So right now we have, I think we said it was 240 or 220,000 faces. So I'm going to keep it around that. I'm going to try 200,000 faces, and hopefully this doesn't cause any issues. I have not actually used the Quadraflow remesh on this computer before. I've used it at home, but you'll see at the bottom, the Quadraflow remesh is loading, and it may be too much for right now, and we can do the head and not have to worry about that if it's not working. But if the QuadraFlow, oh, actually, there it's going a little bit. I'll give it a second. But so the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to be working on the head. So for the head, I tend to start with a sphere, just because it gives you a lot of dimension and a lot of not a lot of big flat faces like you would get with a cylinder. So, and you can kind of like sculpt it a little bit easier than you can other things without having to remesh it right away. I'd really like to show you guys this, so I'm hoping it loads, but it's at 40% and it might take a bit. But basically, and I think I can cancel it, or maybe I can't. Oh boy. Okay, that's all right. I'm gonna see if it'll let me move on. It will not. Okay. Oh, it's canceling. Okay, I think I clicked escape and that worked. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do, basically all that quad remeshing is going to do is just make it look a little bit cleaner while you're sculpting. But it's no big deal if you want to explore that a little bit when you're playing with it, go for it. And if you're ever having issues with anything that you're working on, feel free to either come into any of the locations or to email us. Also, there's tons and tons of YouTube videos that are super helpful with this, but sometimes you need that in-person stuff, so feel free to reach out and we will 100% like help you out. So, okay, so we're gonna work a little bit on the head before we have to get going. So I'm gonna do Mesh Ecosphere, or Icosphere. And so without touching anything, I want to go to this Add Icosphere menu, and I want to turn up the subdivisions. So that's making it more and more smooth. I just want to turn up to like 4 or 5, just because it won't be super angular that way. So I'm just going to size this to about where her head is. And then I can go in and start dragging it down and using that proportional edit to make it a little bit more close to her head shape. And this will be super important for getting a side view. So the body, you could probably wing it if you really wanted to. But for the face especially, you really want to have that side view. And here's also where you'll see how ridiculous some of my proportions are on her. But you know, that's okay. Cartoon characters tend to look a little crazy. But you just want to get it as accurate as you can. I would not try to do any details right now on the head. I would just make sure that it fits in general, like the profile of her face. So I will probably like make sure that all the way up to the nose bridge and then down at the chin. But like where the mouth and the nose are, I would just add those separately. So I've kind of got that in there. Oops. Okay. So now we've got this head in here, kind of blocked in. And I'm going to actually go in, now that we've done that modeling part, I want to go in with sculpting, which you can actually do that from scratch or just from sculpting. So if you put the sphere in there, you can actually sculpt it to get this shape. I just like to model to start out because it's a little bit faster. But you'll want to go in with like the inflate and make sure you have it on control or on negative to kind of make sure that it's pushing in. And we want to do the same thing as before and have it on the mirror mode. But I want to push these eyes back, and we can bring out where the nose is just a little bit. So you'll want to like think about where the planes of the face are. So you know that like eyebrows stick out and eyes go in. If you need something a little bit sharper, you can always do the draw tool. And you'll just kind of want to go in where you've put the eyes, which I'm now realizing I was not paying attention, and the eyes are much lower. So if you ever realize something like that, you've done all your sculpting and you're like, oh, these proportions are so wrong, you can always just select and then And I want to make sure that I have these both selected. And then you can just bring it down to where it's supposed to be. So that may have just been a situation of they're slightly different across the profile and the front view. And yeah, I can see that I've got the nose a little off. But yeah, and you can just keep on going in and changing stuff. If you ever notice that you did what I just did and you're only affecting one half because you didn't have the X-ray mode on, what you can do is once you've got this selected, do mesh and then symmetrize. And it'll default to, I think, -X to +X. You can change it. So if this was the correct side, instead, you can change which direction it is, or actually if you wanted to do top and bottom or whatever you need, you can always change that right there. So now that I've fixed that, or did I fix it? I think I did it the correct way. Yes, I think I did it the correct way. But basically, you just want to kind of go in and start sculpting things. So this is where things start to look real crazy. They start to look very like little aliens. But you'll see as you start adding in more and more things that they start looking a little bit better. So like if you go in and add in like this layering, you can start to get an eyelid there. And you can start to get that nose put in a little bit. And if you see like how it is right now, it's super blocky, you can always go and add that modifier again to do a subdivision. It's going to take a second. It's thinking. Hopefully it doesn't have any issues. Okay, there we go. Now you'll see it's a lot softer because we've got that extra subdivision in there. So I'm going to apply that. And now when I go back in, there's a whole lot more geometry for me to kind of play around with. So I know we're getting really close to the end, and there's a whole lot of stuff to cover, but we are also meeting 2 more times. So however much we get done in this session is no big deal. And we can always bring questions to next session because next session is just going to be some hard modeling props and then a way to do hair. So I'm going to keep on working on this model. And by next week, or not next week, but the next session, let's hope to get done with just the body and head. And you can keep on adding details as you go. But I would say especially the head, just because we are going to be working on hair. So you want to make sure that you at least have a head, even if it's not a perfect face, just a head to add something to. And I'm going to keep on working on this model, and I will, when I send the YouTube video version of this out to everyone, I will also send a copy of this model if you want to mess around with it or use any parts from mine. If you're having trouble doing hands or feet or face or whatever it is, you can always kind of like look at how I did mine and the geometry on that and everything like that. So it is 7, but I do want to make sure that if anyone has a quick question, they can get that answered. So if you would like to ask that question, now would be your time. But I will also in chat really quickly, just when I can actually stop sharing here. In chat, I'm going to just share our email. So this is the generic email for all of Creative Experience. And then that one is mine specifically if you have any questions. Yeah, does anyone have questions that I can answer real quick? Okay. So I'm not seeing any questions. Just want to make sure. Just wanted to give you guys a second to do that. But yeah, thank you guys so much for coming this time around. As you can see from the fact that we were working here for about 45 minutes or an hour, it takes time to do 3D modeling, and it's not easy. You know, it's something that you really gotta work on. And I know once we get to the end of this project, it's going to be so exciting for you guys to have an actual character, which is why I really wanted to do this. One last thing I just want to say is anything that you have a ton of questions about, write down, or you can email me and we can answer it beforehand, or you can write it down and ask it at the beginning of next session. And yeah, and if you guys want to be able to like share what you're working on, feel free to send that to me as well. If you're comfortable having the other people see like the position that you're in at the point that we're at, I can definitely share so that everyone can see like what people have been working on. Or we can also wait to the end, the last session, and we can share. Worst case scenario, we only see mine, and that's totally fine. But yeah, anyway, thank you guys so much for coming. I'm gonna go ahead and end the session now, but I really appreciate it. And if you guys have any questions again, just let me know. Thanks.